The college football world is changing. Will it change for Oregon and the Pac-12? Welcome to Ducks Live, our fifth edition. We got Mike Black on the line from Fifth Quarter College Football. Of course, we will throw up the banner and want you to head on over to Twitter, follow him and all of his related platforms over there as well. Again, leave your comments, your questions, your debate topics in the live chat, and we will get to them as we talk Ducks football and by extension the Pac-12 in the nation right here. Michael, how we doing tonight?
Doing all right, man. Just got done filming another show and ready to go.
Absolutely. So before we get deep into the football, what show is that? I want to let everyone know where they can find you.
So we just did an episode of the Ducks and Dogs podcast, which is on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere you can listen to podcasts. And we just did an episode with the voice of college football and Mark Rogers.
Wow, special edition. Very nice. Good stuff. Yeah, I had a great time with you and Matt talking of the Pac-12, all this expansion business, and the perception of the Pac-12, which I think is an intriguing conversation that we will have throughout the season, and with all the Big 12, Big 12's been on the brain of all of us covering college football for about a week now, but with all the big week one matchups, of course, and for Oregon into week two, it's going to be fascinating to evaluate the conference after those first couple weeks. All right, Mike, we got recruiting, and of course, this has been a gold mine for Mario Cristobal and his staff now for going on 3 recruiting cycles after the top class in the Pac-12 for the last 2 years, and now going into 2022, it looks like much the same, and a huge Saturday night coming up for Cristobal and his staff with Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, Saturday Night Live is something they started quite a few years ago. It was honestly before all these schools had their own little camps and stuff. There were a couple schools that had it. Oregon was one of them. And this Saturday, Oregon has 22 uncommitted prospects coming in, and about 6 people who are already committed to the University of Oregon coming in to participate in this little camp, meet with the staff, and just see where they're at. And it's worth noting that last year, almost all of the people to come to Saturday Night Live that ended up being takes were committed to Oregon. So coming into that, we do have, out of the 22 class, the big names, we've already talked about Cyrus Moss. We've talked about Kevin Coleman, Jaleel Florence, Jaleel Tucker. A few other guys are there. There are still some who are unconfirmed. And it's going to be a really big weekend for us. The biggest part of it is going to be the 2023 class. We have maybe a dozen 2023 prospects coming in for the Saturday Night Live. And it'll be interesting to see towards the end how that works out. But I think, and I'm going to call this now, I think Cyrus Moss commits this weekend.
Very interesting. We've discussed Mr. Moss, and Mike has certainly given us the evaluation and rundown on his talents and the likelihood that he signs with Oregon. Of course, the commit needs to come first. We're headed toward National Signing Day, of course, in December. Abel, blame it on me. We had an issue with, what happened here, you heard from Mike right off the top in regards to me appearing on their Ducks and Dogs podcast. I got a little mixed up, was thinking about my show, thought I had invited Mike to do the Oregon Live at what was 7 o'clock Eastern time and 4 o'clock Pacific time. And then I had to, of course, fulfill my obligation because so if things got mixed up, I needed to move us back an hour, and then I had a personal call come in that I had to take that pushed us back another 10 minutes. So thanks to Mike. Thank you, everybody else, for waiting and for the time adjustment here at the last few minutes leading into our current hour window. So let's take advantage, make the most of it. And D-Rock Irish is saying, I'm a Notre Dame fan. Why am I here first? Abel, thank you so much for the comment as well. And rest assured, we're going to make it worth your while. All right. Don't see any comments or questions necessarily here, but bring them. And so in regards to everything you've gathered about who's showing up on Saturday night, any other big headliners of who you're looking for?
I'm really looking forward to seeing Dalen Austin and Caleb Presley, 2 big-name cornerbacks from the 2023 class. My personal top corner isn't somebody we're going after yet, but coming in really close to that is going to be Caleb Presley out of Federal Way, Washington. Really good cornerback. He's hosting his own, taking advantage of the NIL and hosting his own little camp where he's from, marketing himself as a top-rated recruit, which he very much is. Really quality player. There is a quarterback and tight end duo of brothers who are coming in. I don't remember which class they're in off the top of my head, but they're both really quality players. And honestly, I really want to see how Jaleel Florence and Jaleel Tucker end up doing at the camp. I want to see them against top tier reps, especially any of the players not from these pipeline states, because Cyrus Moss from Nevada, not a huge pipeline. Kevin Coleman from Missouri, they have a lot of talent out there. All the kids coming in from Oregon and Washington don't typically get to play guys of this top caliber. Washington, not so much. They've had a lot more talent as of late. But I'm really interested to see Riley Williams out of Portland and a few other kids play. I think we have Trayon Williams, who's already committed. Interested to see him match up with some of these wide receivers like Stephon Johnson out of Texas, like Kevin Coleman out of Missouri, and see how they fare, albeit they haven't been developed yet by our staff, which I have the utmost confidence in. It'll be really interesting to see how they fare against this top-tier talent.
Mike Black on the line from Fifth Quarter College Football, breaking down Oregon for us, as he does on a regular basis. Please join his podcast, Ducks and Dogs, with he and Matt breaking it down. I had a great time joining on the last episode. All right. Anything else before we move topics here? Anything else you think we need to cover on the recruiting path?
It is of note, I guess, that Kelvin Banks is not showing up to the Saturday Night Live, although that is not really considered to be a concern. His mom and him have still shown immense amount of love to Oregon over the past few days after announcing that they won't be there this weekend.
D-Rock Irish, my apologies. D-Rock Irish used to be being late. I always have some kind of excuse, but I mentioned to a number of people, this was a few weeks ago, because I was trying to get people in our live streams, and I will make the same deal with everybody right here, because this will keep me on time. This is what will do it, even though I couldn't avoid what happened tonight, just a personal call that I needed to take care of. Regardless, here's the deal, everyone. Our next Oregon Live, we will be on time. If all of you go out, here's the deal. And this has nothing to do with Mike. Mike's boom, punctual, on time, waiting for my link. It's this guy over here. So I take responsibility. So the deal is all of you guys need to go out and you grab 3 or 4 Oregon fans or college football fans, because we've got good representation here. Grab 3 or 4 college football fans. You bring them into the next live show. We'll be on time. I'll be on time, and we'll have a crowd of 30 to 40 times, 3 to 4 times. Let's not go crazy. 3 to 4 times what we typically have. There's our deal right there. Because Mike brings it for us each and every time. So we thank Mike for being here. All right. Now let's get to this. Let's get to this expansion talk, because a few people brought it up in the chat. So let's review this real quick. Of course, Texas, Oklahoma to the SEC. It became official today. We know that's going to happen. There's going to be quite the battle about when that's going to happen, because if everything plays out to the letter of the law and the contracts, how they're currently signed, they're not released until the calendar year, sports year 25-26. I don't see that happening. Too much bad blood, too much money on the line, too much all of that. There's going to be contracts that are going to be torn up and renegotiated and money exchanged hands. And this situation cannot just hang in the balance for 5 years. Exactly. That's not going to happen. There's just, again, too much money on the line for the SEC. We can't have a lame duck league sitting there for 5 years. All of that. There's just so many reasons why it won't happen. But, of course, I got to say, before we move on to the Pac-12/Oregon slice of this, Mike, for as much as I have ripped on Bob Bowlesley, the Big 12 commissioner, in recent, even before this situation, I certainly had my issues with how he was running the league from a football standpoint. Mm-hmm. And then this came down coming a couple weeks after the Big 12 media days, in which he stated, when asked, about conference expansion and realignment. There's really nothing in the works. He just made himself look awful. Okay, despite all my criticisms, and I'm not the only one, I will say this move that he has made with this cease and desist letter, for as much as it might be just fluff and not be reasonable or have any backing, hey, he's at least going down with a fight. Either there's substance there that can be legally backed, and he's going to take a chunk out of ESPN and Texas and Oklahoma, really ESPN, and he's going to go down with at least some dignity, and with he's going to take some swings going down, or it's something. It's he's taking a shot at least.
Yeah, I think he is, and I think he might have a little bit of something if they could pull anything out of that ESPN All-American or the American Athletic Conference thing. Other than that, I think the main factor involving this is the clause in the Big 12 agreement that says even if there is just one team standing, that could sue the rest of the schools for the downfall of the Big 12. And to kind of piggyback off of your comment about how they're not going to be in here too much longer, Texas and Oklahoma, do you remember when Nebraska was moving out of the conference and they played that one year, how chippy those games were getting between Nebraska and the other Big 12 teams? I think it's dangerous to some of the players on Texas and Oklahoma for them to stay in the conference more than 1 year.
That's a great point, because, and think of how much more impactful this is. So Nebraska leaving the league was, okay, one of your big members is leaving the league and it got chippy. This is your two biggest members that are holding the whole league together are leaving, and your league is disintegrating. So it will be interesting to see this play out. It's also going to be interesting to evaluate. Let's say they only play one more football season. Maybe it's two, maybe to see and evaluate Oklahoma and Texas, especially Oklahoma, considering this is supposed to be the best Oklahoma team we've seen in a long, long time, to see once they get to the playoff, if they get to the playoff, but that's the expectation, and meet an SEC team or two, how they perform, and how there's going to be a lot of talk based on the performance in those games to either say, whoa, SEC, Oklahoma really brought it this year. Maybe they'll do better than we thought. Or no, same Oklahoma. They just got dusted by 4 touchdowns by Alabama. They're not going to challenge for the SEC. Look, and all the jokes are going to roll.
Yeah, I personally am of the opinion if Oklahoma does not succeed this year with the caliber of quarterback I think Spencer Rattler is, I just don't know if I could trust them again if they don't succeed with the team they have now. Their defense has gotten better every year over the past few years. They have Spencer Rattler. They still have Lincoln Riley. They've still been landing all these recruits. They're landing defensive talent. This is the year they have to do something. You have to win a playoff game or keep it close at the very least. If you're the 4 seed playing the 1 seed, then okay, you can lose, but keep it close. Don't get blown out by 30.
The last performance against LSU was like an all-time embarrassment. When you give up 7 touchdowns in the first half, not 7 touchdowns in the game.
How good the LSU team is. If you're a playoff team, you should not be allowing 7 touchdowns and a half.
No. Clemson, people think back on that championship game as Clemson being blown out. It was 28-25 with like 10 minutes left in the game. That was a good game until the last 10 minutes. I watched like 4 plays and I was like, LSU is going to kill them.
I watched 4 plays and I was like, we should have got that spot.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did. But there was that trip to Tempe late in the season.
Yeah. 9 conference games. Not fun.
So now let's point this conversation toward the Pac-12 and Oregon. This is the first time, Mike, in going back through, you mentioned Nebraska, and of course that was a run of Nebraska to the Big Ten, Texas A&M, Mizzou to the SEC, Colorado, and then Utah popping up from the group of 5 into the Pac-12. Those were all moves that were logical based on geography and could be foreseen to a certain extent. And then Maryland, Rutgers to the Big Ten a few years later. People are throwing out, and I'm not talking about just crazy people online just coming up with things. I'm talking about like legitimate theories on how this could break because the Big Ten wants to keep up and because the Pac-12 and the ACC don't want to become irrelevant and all sorts of things that we could have some like we're hearing crazy things. We're hearing like the Big Ten and the Pac-12 just coming together. We're hearing about the Big Ten. I don't see the Big Ten doing this because of the way they operate their league. But I've heard from fairly legitimate sources, the Big Ten just goes out to USC and UCLA and just rips them out. Again, that seems a bit too much because that doesn't seem like a Big Ten kind of move.
What I saw regarding that was USC, UCLA, I think it was Oregon and Washington. Or no, it was Oregon and Arizona State.
Can you imagine?
The Pac-12 would be gutted.
And that certainly wouldn't be an all-conference move, I wouldn't think. You know, they're not they're not going to fly USC women's soccer players to Rutgers a couple times and back out. You know,
and I think the Pac-12 wouldn't have a choice but to let them stay for the other sports because UCLA is your main basketball school. Are you just going to let them walk out when they're willing to stay for basketball? Oregon's your best women's basketball team. Are you just going to make them leave when they're willing to stay for that? Or Washington, UCLA, and Oregon for softball. Like those are your best teams in the other sports. So they kind of be backed into a corner to have to let them just play one sport in the other conference.
So I'll make the same comment that I made when NIL erupted and everybody was asking, I'm sure you are asking me on a daily basis, what's going to happen? And I'll make the same comment. And I feel somewhat proud that Nick Saban made the same comment like a few weeks later. Basically, I'll give you all my theories. I'll give you all my ramification possibilities. I'll give you all my benefits versus negatives. And I'll do all that. But understand there's going to be things that are going to happen that nobody foresaw.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say the same thing here. I'll give you all my theories, and I have, but I want to give Mike the floor here, of course. So I know I'm asking you the impossible, Mike, but what do you think's going to happen? What are some of the possibilities that you think are more probable?
So when it comes to the Pac-12, my most realistic expectation is to add probably Oklahoma State and maybe another school. That's I don't think they're going to add that many teams. Like people are speculating them adding 4 to 6 teams. Like I don't think that's going to happen. If they add teams, it'll be Oklahoma State, one other school, and then I don't know. Outside of that, I think honestly this might be. I would say this is probably a 70% likelihood if I had to guess. Is that the Pac-12 and the Big 12 make a scheduling deal where the Pac-12 Pac-12 and Big 10 make a scheduling deal where they play a serpentine type schedule, and the top team of the Pac-12 in the next year would play the top team in the Big 10. Second team of the Pac-12 would play the second team of the Big 10. And I think that's a really logical way to keep your strength of schedule up with the SEC without completely dissolving your conference and dissolving maybe the Big 10 without losing your conferences for all the other sports. A scheduling agreement could be huge for both conferences. Ohio State would always have that extra marquee game. Oregon would have that extra marquee game. USC would. All the big programs would be most of the time playing the other big time programs, and they would draw massive ratings. The Rose Bowl does great every year.
Does that get a bit stale and boring though? So if Ohio State's won they're going on 5 consecutive Big Ten championships.
Mm-hmm.
And Oregon's playing as well as they are right now in the Pac-12. I know that they did and did not win the conference last year. They won the Pac-12 championship game and the year before. So if they make a commitment like that, and let's say the 2 plays the 2 and the 3, or whatever the agreement is, and most of these teams only play one big time opponent outside of the conference, and the likes of Oregon and Ohio State aren't looking at the SEC as a pool of teams that they're going to be scheduling on a regular basis because there's this agreement between the Big Ten and the Pac-12 or the ACC that they're not including them in their mindset of scheduling.
So to work kind of around that, my thought would be that the Pac-12 and Big Ten, who both play 9-game conference schedules,
Yes.
drop that to an 8-game conference schedule on par with the SEC. Replace that 9th game with the Big Ten, and the top teams, hopefully, maybe they, some sort of like handshake agreement type thing, still try and schedule another top tier team outside of those two conferences to try and keep, because the goal for the top competitors is going to be to keep up with the strength of schedule of the top teams in the SEC and the ACC. And you're not going to do that only playing one out of conference power game. So you would have to, in a sense, kind of schedule that extra team, unless the Pac-12 or Big Ten ends up asserting themselves top to bottom as one of the better conferences and maybe arguably against the SEC. Because strength of schedule, I think it comes into play a lot for the people who are deciding who plays in the playoff. I think they look at strength of schedule a large amount when you look at the 2014 year when TCU didn't get in. It comes down at the end of the day, a lot of their rankings, if you question it, a certain strength of schedule metric might explain a lot of their rankings, and you just got to keep up with what the SEC schedule is going to
be. I look at it somewhat different. I understand what you're saying. It makes sense that there are going to be SEC schedules that are just going to be loaded with those two additions, and we'll see at what point the 12-team playoff comes to be. Right now, if you look back upon all the playoff seasons, 2014 through 2020, and then apply the 12-team model, basically 10-2 / 9-3 is the dividing line. If you go 10-2, I ran the numbers on and applied the model. If you go 10-2 as a Power 5 team during all those playoff years, you would have made the playoffs. If you went 9-3 / 10-3, meaning you played a conference championship game and lost, you're about 50-50. You're on the dividing line. That's where the playoff committee's making determinations. If you go 9-3 now in the SEC as it's going to be configured going forward, you're in the playoffs.
Yeah, and if that Big Ten or Pac-12 school doesn't play a hard enough schedule and they're 10-2, that 9-3 SEC team could get in. That's why I think it would be advantageous for them to have that extra Power 5 game instead of playing Fresno State or North Dakota State or whoever they're playing. No disrespect to Fresno State, North Dakota State, they're good schools, but they're not going to get you that recognition for the committee. At the end of the day, the playoff committee is humans, and humans have biases, humans have predeterminations, and you want to kind of appeal to that in a sense to where, all right, this team played a tough schedule and they wound up with a pretty good record.
I still see it in such a way that the SEC is going to be far and away the best conference. Already the best conference, and now we've got the two big additions, and doesn't one of these conferences want to step up and keep pace? And the Big Ten seems to be the most capable of doing that. They're the closest now, both on the field and in terms of money. And they seem to have the capability to go out there and lure in other teams to make them, to help them keep pace.
My thought on that is that, we're pretty sure if Notre Dame joins the conference, it's the ACC, right?
Yes.
So who is there to grab who will come? Who is going to come to the Big Ten? Unless you get the Oregon USC kind of grouping, who's going to come? Like, are you going to get Oklahoma State and Iowa State? Does that push the needle that much? Not really. It's the teams available to get are, if you could somehow magically pull Clemson out of the ACC, that's not happening. Or Notre Dame, probably also not happening. And then it's that Pac-12 grouping. I don't know what else there is for them to add that will sway public opinion or sway the perception of the conferences enough.
And to your point, Iowa State people shouldn't be overestimating Iowa State based on recent success. Historically, they're a bottom dweller. Matt Campbell's done an amazing job, but market share, they play in the same state as Iowa. Like you're not gaining anything monetarily. And I think the Big Ten's going to look, I know the Big Ten's going to look at that. What value are we making the same amount of money with two additions and only distributing So each team, each school gets less money. We can't do that. If I'm the Big Ten, and I can't really speak to Cincinnati's situation in regards to what else they bring to the table besides a good football program and a sizable TV market, Cincinnati. And I don't know what the distribution is in Cincinnati of Ohio State fans that they already have in Big Ten country versus watching UC football. I can't speak to that. But I at least research the Cincinnati edition, and this is outside the box. And I would do this if I were the ACC, and I would contemplate it if I were the Big Ten, but I would certainly do this for sure if I was the ACC, and that's go to UCF. Yes, that's been my baby during this whole thing.
So actually, the UCF point I really like. Now, when it comes to Cincinnati, I think that's kind of similar to Texas Tech, TCU, Baylor, and them. Although they are in these massive markets, my money puts that most of those massive markets are either Ohio State fans or Texas fans. I mean, unless
I don't even think those other schools are in massive markets except for TCU.
I was
Baylor's in Waco, Texas Tech's in Lubbock
Houston instead of Texas Tech.
Yeah,
but yeah. So like Houston, TCU, those teams are in massive markets, but they're not going to pull the numbers in that market. Texas is pulling the numbers in that markets,
and they're NFL cities.
Yeah, and they're NFL as well. And when you're looking in Cincinnati, Cincinnati, I'm almost positive that most of those are Ohio State fans. Now, they do get good ratings. That's because they're a good football team. And the AAC is a solid conference, and they have other good football teams. They're good games. They're going to get decent ratings. When you have them playing UCF, UCF's fan base, as somebody who lives in Central Florida, it feels like that of a Power 5 team, if you ask me. Like that fan base is huge. They love their Knights. If you ever say something bad about UCF on Twitter, your mentions are done for. Like their fan base is huge. They have a quality football team. They're willing to spend the money. They have the big school. They're there. They can add something to your conference.
Yeah, and to play off of your later points, yes, UCF has shown that football is important to them. They want to be seen as a big time football school.
Yeah, they went and outbid Oregon to keep Scott Frost, and they outbid him and made him their head coach. And I mean, it's not for a school that hasn't always had the best football tradition before this run. They've had some good years. They've been solid, but to invest like that, they have a bright future. I don't think there's anything stopping them from being a solid Power 5 team within the next 10 years. Like they've been improving. They had that one rebuilding year between switching coaches, but they have a huge market, and it's an untapped market because Gainesville, North Florida, you got Florida State, way North Florida. I don't even consider Tallahassee part of Florida half the time. And then you got Miami way down south. There's this huge market, a massive amount of people that's completely untapped.
Absolutely. D-Rock watches enough to know that I've been pounding my fist about UCF here for a week now, specifically the ACC. But now, because I want to keep the geography, I would love to see college football maintain some geographical sense. But if the Big Ten's just going to go for broke,
UCF's
in the recruiting foothold, Ohio State's already down there. But maybe they do better for Penn State and others to get down there to Florida.
Yeah, if you're going to add for recruiting grounds, you just add like Houston and UCF and call it a day. You're set right there.
True. Yeah. Houston, there was an incredible statistic about it was connected to the Houston metro area and recruiting here in the last few years. The University of Houston, I know that they don't play amazing football, but they have in the past, of course, the Ed Oliver's team that beat Dalvin Cook and Florida State about 5 years ago in the Peach Bowl.
Who was their quarterback a while ago? Was it Warren Moon?
Well, it was De'Ara King.
Yeah. I'm talking about way back when they were good.
Oh, Andre Ware.
There you go.
Heisman.
There you
89. That Houston, there was a statistic on one of those teams, and Ed Oliver was like the number one rated player in high school in the country, and he stayed and went to Houston. That they didn't have a player on their roster outside of like 18 miles or something like that. It was some ridiculous statistic like that.
The talent's huge there, man. There's so much talent.
And Ohio State already goes there and gets some players. Again, the rest of the Big Ten can't do that. Penn State
one team
has
can't carry a conference. We've seen Clemson try, we've seen Ohio State try, we've seen Oregon try, we've seen USC try. It's especially with how the SEC is loading up in this arms race. One team's not going to be able to do it, so you need the other schools to be able to tap into those markets.
The Big Ten already made a blunder 7, 8, 9 years ago going after Rutgers and Maryland. And that was, we just had a conversation with Matt, of course, on your show regarding digital media, online media versus cable and where the world's headed. And the Big Ten just got in the door at the deterioration of cable and didn't see it. They went after Maryland and Rutgers because of television markets, not because they play great football or basketball. I know Maryland has a nice basketball program, but they went after New York City, Baltimore, DC. That's what they were thinking.
Which in the 90s would have been a great play.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not that time no more. It's you gotta, as much as the people who are diehard college football fans are gonna hate this, the regional markets are mattering less and less when it comes to making money in college football. It doesn't matter what region you're in. The best team in the country over the last few years is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Like, I don't even know where Tuscaloosa is. I've been through Alabama many a times. I don't know where Tuscaloosa is. Like, your market does not matter. If you could market your team, if you could play good football, you'll get the ratings. So adding a team like Maryland and Rutgers just because they're in big cities isn't gonna do much anymore.
It would only matter if Ohio State was a free agent. Like if they were out there and they're in Columbus, Ohio, it's like a top 25 to 30 market and the people there are watching Ohio State football. But in, like you said, Houston, they're not watching the University of Houston. They're NFL fans. New York City, they're not Rutgers fans. They're NFL fans.
Los Angeles is who's ever winning championships fans.
Yep.
If you're not winning, they're not watching.
I made the statement, even for as great as USC is and the potential's there, that when JT Tuimoloau was being wined and dined by USC, we had heard that they flew him over Los Angeles. And my response to that was, to look down upon all the people that are going to be ignoring his games, that are going to be watching NFL games on Sunday?
USC's fan base is massive when they're winning. When they're losing, it's nothing. It's just like any team in LA. The Lakers ratings great when they're winning, terrible when they're losing. The Chargers, if they start winning, their ratings are going to be amazing. The Rams, ratings are terrible, started winning, ratings went up. If you're not winning, LA does not care what you're doing at all.
Yeah.
And Washington has the Seattle market to tap into. They did really great ratings wise when they were really good. They're doing okay now. It's just in a lot of these big markets, if you're not a really good team competing for that top spot in your sport, you're not going to get half of those people in that area to even blink an eye. There's so much to do in those cities, and there's so many other teams and other sports that they don't have to go watch a mediocre team.
Yeah. It's not Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah, or Eugene, Oregon.
Yep. There you go.
Or Lincoln, Nebraska is the worst of them all. There's nothing but Nebraska football.
We talk Oregon football here with Mike Black. You can catch him on Fifth Quarter College Football. I will pop up the banner here in just a second. Follow him on Twitter as well. And also, when you do that, you can follow him right to his podcast, Ducks and Dogs, breaking down the Pac-12 and Oregon and Washington in particular. All right, Mike. So we've got fall camp opening here in about 8 or 9 days. Something in that range. Anthony Brown has been named, as you let me know before we started to record, the number one quarterback, but that doesn't mean, hey, he's number one. He gets all the first team reps and we're not looking elsewhere. He's currently the starter, but it's still a competitive situation.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's not like spring where he got literally every single rep with the ones. Even if he is a starter, there's no reason to not give these elite talents some reps, especially when this guy hasn't played for you. Although he's an experienced player, he's done good things at Boston College. You got to give these kids a chance to compete for the job, and you can't do Anthony Brown the disservice of not having people compete against him and make him better. I hope to see a full competition. But yeah, Mario Cristobal said that Anthony Brown was the first quarterback going into the fall camp, and he also mentioned Ty Thompson. When asked about Ty Thompson, he said Ty Thompson's very much in the race for the starting job, and he said he's heavy in it. Like he emphasized that Ty Thompson is in it for this starting job, and that he could win it come the end of fall camp, because we've seen many a times a freshman come in spring, they look, it's like, okay, we see why they were rated what they were, but they don't look ready, and then they come in fall and it's a completely different player. So I mean, you could see Ty Thompson be the starter by the end of fall. You never know. There's a lot of time between spring and fall.
Good stuff. We'll continue with some fall camp talk here in a second, but I thought I would point this out to everyone. So basically, there was a viewer. Have you seen this, Mike? By throwing this out there? Okay. Yeah, a viewer did this, which was extremely nice. And they run tristatewoodssketch.com. And they did about 10 different ones of these. So I want to make it very clear. So we are not selling these, folks. That's going to scare everyone, that this is not what you're ordering. You get your own wood sketch. You send in your photo of your significant other, your dog or your cat or your beach scene or whatever you want. And then they, of course, follow through with the handiwork and the skill and put it on the surface of your choice. So again, it's tristatewoodssketch.com. Check it out. Buy one, get one free if you drop my name. There you go. Drop
Mark Rogers gets you all the perks.
Yeah, it wields such influence out there. Absolutely.
Can you imagine being able to name drop like a LeBron James and just be like, yeah, that's my guy.
Drop LeBron. Yeah. So with fall camp, is there anything else out there that interests you?
I'm really interested in the running back room. Verdell had a lot of injuries last year. That was apparent. We don't know what the injuries were. It was like a lot of people called it a ghost injury because he was good one drive, not good the next. Like we didn't know what was going on. Sean Dollars, which was the expected heir apparent, got hurt, tore his ACL, is out for an indefinite amount of time. He's not out for the whole season. He'll probably be back around the midseason mark. Cyrus Abibilikio transferred to Boise State. So that gives a lot of opportunity for guys like Cross Patton and guys like Seven McGee and Byron Cardwell to try and get some actual meaningful playing time at a young age. And Cross Patton's a walk-on, son of Big Boy from Outcast, if anyone didn't know that. And he came all the way from Atlanta, walked on to Oregon. And he's put in a lot of work, and the coaches have raved about how much he's developed since being on campus. So I can't wait to see which running backs get some playing time. On top of that, Oregon has been known, if you follow the Pac-12 heavily, for the past few years of having one decent receiver and then a bunch of not so great receivers. Going into this year, I would not be shocked if there are 5 NFL wide receivers on this team. Now, obviously, that's peak end, like if they all perform as we expect, no injuries or so forth. Because you have Johnny Johnson, you have Micah Pittman. Those guys are already projected NFL players. You have Devin Williams, you have Troy Franklin, highly rated players who are a lot of people think will end up being really good. And then you have the other 4-star guys we've landed, like the Isaiah Brevards, the Johnny Delgados. And it's going to be fun to see how these guys make an impact on a veteran wide receiver room. I don't know how you keep guys like Troy Franklin off the field, even though you have 3 returning starters on the wide receiver room. I think I would love to see Troy Franklin starting week 1, but I think he's going to earn his spot in that week 2 game against Ohio State. I think he's going to play really well in that game and end up becoming a starter, pushing somebody back to the 4th wide receiver.
Good stuff. And if we're able to get together next week, we could certainly give a full fall camp preview and certainly run down what happened on Saturday and what the ramifications were on recruiting.
Yeah, I'll make some notes for that. I'm really excited. Cyrus Moss is committing. I'm calling it.
There it is. There it is. All right, Mike. We appreciate you stopping by as always, making this happen with our Oregon Live event here. We've done it 5 times. Thanks to Mike. And again, you can catch Mike. Let me pull his banner up here because I want him to convey to everybody where he can be found and where all of his platforms are.
So mainly I tweet off of FQ Ducks, but all my opinionated content, opinions-based content is going to be on SCO Mike B. And it's also going to be on the Ducks and Dogs podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find us. Just search Ducks and Dogs, and it's me and Matt talking college football or college athletics in general, with the West Coast in mind, mainly Washington and Oregon. One of our most recent episodes with Josh Pate of 24/7 Sports has done really well, and Mark Rogers will be on there next.
Wow, you kind of went down the rung there to grab me. Hopefully, you can bounce back and grab some other folks to lift up the guest list there.
You're our favorite. There's a chance, no promises. There's a chance the next guest is Mike Farrell from Rivals.
Okay. Very nice. Well done. So basically what you do is you go on Twitter and you grab Mike's Twitter feed, and all you Anthony Brown fans, that's where you need to go, and you can argue with Mike.
Yeah, they already do. They've all found me already. All the Anthony Brown stands. None of them are Boston College fans. Wonder why.
Good stuff. Mike, we appreciate you stopping by. It's always a good time. Hopefully we can get back together right around the beginning of fall camp and update everyone.
Yeah, love being on. Thanks for having me.
All right, folks. We are here live just about every day on every one of the formats that we provide, whether it's the 22 team channels, the main channel, and we'll figure out what's in store for the weekend. Our next scheduled live stream isn't until Tuesday night at 8:00 Eastern time with Nebraska Live, but you guys know me. Shoot, it's only Friday night. I will be live at some point between now and then. There's no way I can wait till Tuesday night. I started to unveil, Mike, my predictions, and I was sending those out per video, not just unveiled all at once, but doing a team per video. And then all this expansion team business broke, and I had only had about 5 videos released. So I got to get back on that. I got to work out these predictions and get them out there soon. Yeah. Have you made predictions yet?
Have I made record predictions?
Yes.
Yeah, I dropped them a few months ago. Obviously, I'm going to revise them.
Okay.
I do an early one early in the off season. And then as fall camps unfold, I try and skim over as many of the Power 5 fall camps as I can. And I do record predictions for every Power 5 team.
Very cool. I do as well. So they're coming out again, video by video. And I used to kind of go through conference by conference and make it very systematic. But now I'm having people put the puzzle pieces together. So I released Oregon. Actually, that was the first one I did. Oregon. Then I threw out Virginia. Then I threw out like Michigan State. I'm all over the place. I just want people to kind of be guessing and not be like, oh, he just did Ohio State. Now he's going to do Penn State because they're going to be in second place. Then he's going to do. No. We're not doing it that way this time.
Then you give us like 3 losses. I don't think I like that, Martin.
I did, but I'm you gotta keep still alive for the Pac-12 championship game. Like people still have to kind of follow along to see. Okay, 7-2 in the Pac-12. Is that going to get them to the championship game? We'll have to see.
Pac-12 championship doesn't even interest me at this point. Like unless you're vying for a New Year's 6 at the very least, it's like, well, okay, I've seen it in my life. Obviously, I'm spoiled as a younger Duck fan, so like it's at the point where it's like, okay, a Pac-12 championship, cool. Can we win something that we haven't won?
I get that. It hurts me as a longstanding college football traditionalist that conference championships are this devalued, but if this 12-team playoff kicks in, then you're going to be back locked into the conference championship game.
Yeah, 100%. And It doesn't help that the conference championship has been against USC. And for some reason, no matter how good they are, they seem to play at their very worst when they go to play against Oregon. Don't know why that is, but what can you do?
And I think it was a good move. Talk about moves by the Pac-12, and we pick on most of them. I do think strategically it was a good move to place the conference championship game on a Friday night, so it's not up against anything. Playing. But for some reason, we always enter that weekend, and it just seems like people are still ignoring it.
I saw, like I said, I live in Central Florida. I was actually out bar hopping the night that Oregon was playing in the conference championship, and it was playing in every single bar I went to.
Okay.
Besides one, but that was a really, really country bar. Very
cool. I am also going to be attempting this, Mike. You'll see. That we want to be on for 24 consecutive hours live. So I don't know how this is going to play out. You know, I may be calling you to say, I'm going to go take a nap. Can you just talk for an hour?
Hey, I'll do that
We
anytime.
may be doing that because when I sit here for like 2.5 hours during a call-in show and then I get up, like my hips are pretty much like locked. I can't even do that.
I've been debating doing a 24-hour stream over on the fifth quarter channel. Something involving college football. I don't know how I would do it yet.
So the timing I'm looking at is that I'm going to forget week 0. So we're talking about week 1, and we've got the Thursday night games. That's when Ohio State, Minnesota play. There's like 3 or 4 decent games. So I'm thinking, okay, after those games, people will want to talk till maybe 2 in the morning. And then I got to crash. So I believe I'm going to come on at 2 in the morning the night before.
Okay.
So that's Wednesday night, Thursday morning at 2 a.m. Eastern time, and then try to make it 24 hours.
Okay. That could work. That'd be really cool. I think it would draw a lot of attention.
And of course, once we hit like 6 p.m. and the games start to kick off, it's going to become kind of like a watch party.
Yeah,
football.
I'll talk to John and them, see if they want to come join anything.
Yeah, I'll need people to definitely kind of carry something. It's some.
John's the owner of Fifth Quarter, by the way.
Okay, very cool. All right, Mike. Thank you so much again.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
We'll see you soon. All right, everyone. Again, Nebraska Live Tuesday at 8 Eastern. That's the next scheduled live stream, but you know me. We'll be back live at some point before that. See you then.